Well, welcome everyone to the third annual Textile Camp. We started in 2018 because we wanted to elevate the level of collecting quality information about textiles and quilts and clothing and anything related, flags, and in Summit County and in the area. Vicki and I have done programs together since 1988, I say. She says 1989. But was very much excited to come be part of all of the textile camps. And we just greatly appreciate Colorado Mountain College and Heidi's support for this great room. I mean,
and we love having you here. And if you have other events or other types of historical meetings you want to have, just contact me, because we're very open to having this for our community.
And they are one of Summit Historical Society's business partners, and we just really appreciate it because we all know how difficult space might be. Vicki, do you want to do?
I do. I'll walk in front of the podium here. During the day, at breaks and lunch, there'll be time for you to look at some show and tell objects, especially the resource table behind Roger, where we have some examples of padded hangers. Those are samples that were given to us so that we could have a show and tell each time we have a camp. One of those companies, and there are business cards that you can take with you. One of those companies is called Hanger Bee. Now, this business is female owned. It is an entrepreneurial endeavor to make a go of it, doing padded hangers for individuals and museums and any other institution that would like to house costume products. So there is a new product line, and it is a lovely little lapel pin. And she sent us a couple of extras so that we could gift these to people. And Sally and I decided that Mighty Campus.
Thank you. I love it.
And this
Oh my gosh, thank you.
This is the beginning
You're
of a
welcome.
merchandise line, so there will be other little treasures embodied in a lapel pin. So take business cards and look at the hangers and just enjoy. So thank you
so
guys.
much,
Thank you, Heidi.
Yes.
And then Newbie Richardson has traveled the furthest from Alexandria, Virginia. Newbie, we can't thank you enough for the challenging, which some of the rest of you encountered in getting here, including Vicki and Rogers. They drove up. Vida, as she drove up, Heidi driving in from Salt Lake City. So we just appreciate that tenacity, that are here to share that knowledge that many years have accumulated due to good relationships, good friendships. The two men have been our support team through meetings, primarily to go find Tab in every strange city. And that Roger will be our technical, Roger Berger, and don't run from the room, but he is a statistics professor and author of the statistics textbook. We like
That's the usual reaction.
But you will see another side to Roger, and then you probably met my husband Bruce as you came in. We could not have done what we've done over the years without the support of Bruce and Roger, and they will be here to help us today. But when I look back over the past resume and lots of fun projects, the one that people will remember the most is the American Girl doll collection. So, Roger, please. Okay, well, I'll start then while there we go. That's Pleasant Rowland. She's almost 6 feet tall. She is both imposing in her vision and what she wanted to do for 9 to 10-year-old girls. She's an educator, primary education, and I really wanted to tie that in because she's also an entrepreneur. But education was what drove her, and American museums was what she felt most connected with. And so we're talking about the mid-1980s. I'm not going to get specific with the dates that much, but she formed Pleasant Company in Madison, Wisconsin. You probably may not have heard the name Pleasant Company because very soon, next slide please, Roger. Because very soon it became known as the American Girl Doll Collection. But here's her vision. It's not cosmic. It's not out of sight, but we're talking mid-1980s, and she is a primary school educator, is not happy with the way girls connect to history. And she very much had this vision, and when you worked with her, you knew that vision. It was laser sharp, and what do you think, those of you who have the doll? Does it still relate today? So for those who might work with local history, your vision doesn't have to be, or even national or international, your vision doesn't have to be all the fancy words and all the education words. But to implement this, next slide please, Roger. To implement that vision, these are just a few for the MBAs in the group. These are just a few of the dollar statistics. So within the first 2 dolls that she introduced, and she introduced 3 of them with one outfit at one time. That was Molly, Samantha, and Kirsten. Okay, so think about it. She's in Madison, Wisconsin. Kirsten is dear to her heart. Those are statistics, those are real facts, but within the first 2 years, Mattel is ready to go after her big time. And her favorite comment was, to hell with Mattel. Take it back one slide to her vision. This is what made people stand up and pay attention. So help me out. Who had a doll from the very first in, say, 1986?
My daughter.
Okay.
We got the very first, she also was the very first person to really work the mail order catalog business.
Good point. We're gonna tie all of your personal stories in so that we can understand when and how you connected. But my connection came, go ahead Roger, this one just kind of blows your mind away. But here are our first dolls. You may not have noticed that all of them, but end in a 4. And she strategically went geographically around the country and with key times in history to tell the stories. And the stories that she envisioned were meet the doll, then they had birthday, then they had holidays, then they had summer. That evolved after these came out and were an immediate success. So if you've ever done production or product development, these were all done with American museums, curators that are Newbie and Vicki and my colleagues. You won't hear our names because that wasn't part of the deal, but she wanted to cement a relationship with those American museums. So we've got a Samantha. Do we have a Kirsten? No, we don't have a Kirsten. We have a Molly? No, okay.
Not the original, but I have a Molly.
The other, so next slide, please, Roger. So in 1988, I'd been at Colonial Williamsburg approximately 16 months. I get a call from my boss's boss, the Vice President of Education. He says, I want you to work with Pleasant Rowland. Okay, Denny, is that on work time? Because my work job was to supervise the department and the people who dressed 1,200 people in period clothing. There wasn't time to add a project like this. He said, no, it's on your own time. Okay, all right. I meet Pleasant for the first time. It's an immediate bonding. Again, her vision is laser sharp. So we start with, and do you notice something different? We thought Felicity was much more of a New England name, and we lobbied hard to name it Lucy, the doll. So in 1988, we put together the team that was going to use primary documents, and we were going to make Felicity Merriman come alive in Williamsburg, Virginia, 1774. So those are our drawings with fabric swatches that we send to the company. Sandy Bradshaw was the illustrator, Linda Baumgarten the curator, Jackie Fettner and Catherine Llewellyn were producing our children's clothing in the department. So we then start looking at primary documents, of which Pleasant is down. And we interact with both the author of the books, Valerie Tripp, as well as Pleasant. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at primary documents such as a fashion doll. And what are the various pieces? So our job was to educate Pleasant so that when the decisions were made, and it was very obvious, she and her senior team were going to make the decisions about this doll. And she was most passionate about Williamsburg because she had written a children's guide to Colonial Williamsburg as one of her educational publications. Really got her connected in this field. So this is a fashion doll dressed underwear to outer for those that aren't familiar with the 18th century. That'll be a whole nother topic at another time. Next slide, please. We also then provided them with portraits, other primary documents. This is, you'll recognize for those of you that might have the summer outfit, the little, just total, every little girl had this white outfit. And Felicity's is true to form. So one of the portraits in the collection at Colonial Williamsburg. Next slide, please, Roger. So we do all the pre-work. Here's the pattern for the Meet Me outfit. That, and then all of this is happening in 88, 89 for the doll to be introduced. So when did you first get your Felicity?
You know, I got her in the 90s, but I was a big fan of the books, so I was reading the books as soon as they came out.
Excellent. So the books oftentimes were more affordable. They were introducing girls, and so we did find over time that they might have the Meet Me book for all the dolls. So this is the fourth doll, the first original three now. They've added all of the outfits. If you're doing the math, you're talking about a company that geared up and started producing within 7 years. Anybody in product development? Anybody ever gotten a product to the marketplace? That's fast. That's fast. So we knew we had to provide a certain amount. We turn over everything. They do own everything. We had no copyrights. We were not allowed to distribute it. And once we turned it over, we weren't even allowed to talk about it.
Wow.
The first dolls were then produced in Germany, all of her first dolls, for quality purposes. Very critical, and all the dolls have the same body. We lobbied to change the body to a more of an 18th century style. Not doing it. We had problems with the neckline and the way the neck joined here. Not happening. The dolls are the same. So her model was laser sharp, as I said. We could lobby all day long, but she was like, no. We wanted the stays, the foundation garment of the period, in the primary kit. She said, can't happen, too expensive. So she's monitoring historical accuracy and cost to provide the best product that she can. And Valerie Tripp is the author of all the books. So we're educating Valerie about, as she writes, about the clothing and what was possible. No underwear was a big issue. So Felicity is introduced at Colonial Williamsburg with a tee, of which over 11,000 girls came with their dolls and their families to Colonial Williamsburg, and people, this was a very bad visitation year. They saved Colonial Williamsburg's bottom line. So this is the article from the local newspaper, and you see all the little girls in their caps, and they're holding their dolls, and they show up, pardon the modern hairdo. So they show up, and we've dressed the actors who are Colonial Williamsburg employees. So the relationship continued between Pleasant Company, but now you don't even hear the name Pleasant Company. You hear the American Girl Doll Collection, right? Next slide, please, Roger. How do you go from a doll to teaching history? Not just from the books, but from the doll but you also had the clothing. So we began seeing young girls show up at Colonial Williamsburg. Now the families are coming as a destination. They want to come to Felicity's town. It didn't happen with the other dolls because they weren't as connected to a living history site. So Felicity is different, but we began seeing these. Did anybody have any clothing as a young child?
Wanted it so bad.
So we're beginning to see this very, very quickly. And yes, we all received the first dolls off of the production line as a thank you, including my boss's boss. But the girls are beginning to show up in this clothing, and you can see it because they're buying it from there. But now they're really interested. They want to go to the millinery shop. They want to go to the wig shop. They want to experience what Felicity experienced. So next slide, please, Roger. So there is one of the first catalogs that came out. And you can now see a little bit of her story, how you've combined the book, the doll, the girl. That's where we are now. Because this spawned then from the early 90s, then additional business opportunities, primarily for women, but not exclusively, of groups of people that then did patterns. So Newbie is one of those people, and she'll show you later some of the patterns that she developed. You were selling them at Colonial Williamsburg, weren't you, Newbie?
No, I am.
And by then we've got the internet come in, online. So they did then a call to Colonial Williamsburg employees about 10 years ago, and they said, did you have a Felicity? If you did, show up with the doll in your period clothing. You're now employed. 24 young women in their 20s showed up to have their picture taken. That the reason they worked at Colonial Williamsburg, primarily in the trades, was because of Felicity. So then the other things that happen, the growth, are then the places you can go get your doll's hair fixed, and you can go buy the accessories. Now remember, the dolls are all the same size, so you can now dress your Felicity in other clothing styles. So introducing then, we are, and Evie's going to talk here more in a minute and join me up here, is we're gonna get the 9 and 10-year-old girls in Summit County, and this isn't an original idea. It's being done in Florida. It's being done in several other states, but we're going to get the girls to come research 9 and 10-year-olds in the late 19th century in Summit County by reading the newspapers, select a name, help decide the clothes, and be ready for the national meeting in the Country Schoolhouse Association of America in June. So Evie, come to Evie's like, what do you want me to do? Evie is a very talented, one of my quilting buddies, but also is an amazing designer and producer. And I brought the one outfit, Evie, that
Yes, and I have been sewing all my life. My grandparents were drapery makers before the Depression, and I got into sewing just because I usually forgot to buy a Christmas dress for my daughters or whatever. So 4 days before Christmas, I am making dresses for them. They were too old for American Girl dolls by the time that Pleasant started the company in Madison, and I grew up in Madison. So I've been making American Girl doll clothes for kids and for the doll as well as the child for about 12 years now. I did farmers markets for 10 years. So when Sally asked me if I could come up with something for the 1880s, I started looking at pictures of what kids wore, and my grandmother had passed down a Frank Leslie's Ladies Magazine book from 1874.
Wow.
And it had pictures and it had patterns of women's clothing and children's clothing. Way too complicated. But a lot of pleats, and some of them have the bustle, but there are a lot of pleats and just massive amounts of material. These two dresses I kind of fashioned after some of the clothing. This is kind of what a child, I call it the country girl, because the kids wore dresses with pinafores, and the pinafores kept their clothes clean. They could just wash the pinafore, and the dress got washed, once a month or something like that. They also wore little straw hats, and I buy from a wholesale company little boots, and what I call the city girl, her dresses were a little bit more, they were more formal. So they had pleats instead of gatherings, and they wore like high button shoes. And again, I find these at wholesale houses. And just, I love creating clothes for kids and dolls. We had these at the Historical Society booth last week, and I'm coming up also with a pattern for the baseball uniform, the 1880s baseball uniform. And I found gray flannel pinstripes, and I'm going to make the top, and I have an embroidery machine that I can write Dylan across the top.
That's great.
They did it in gray, but I think I'm going to do it in red because it'll show up better. And, make the pants and see if I can find some tennis shoes or something that might kind of fit that era too, so I'll have some ready for the baseball game coming up.
What about adult uniforms?
The baseball uniform?
Yeah.
Adults?
Yeah.
No, I don't do adult clothes. Adult clothes have to fit, and
You know what, Abby?
I'm not that precise anymore.
Though, but that's a great question because the fit, remember I said all the dolls are the same size? Remember, how can a laser sharp
Yes.
vision have this ballooning effect to today? And so, the doll doesn't move around.
Yeah.
But it does give you, and particularly if you are in an area where you might have talented people like Evie, you can go wherever you want with it. I never heard that from Pleasant, but I think that it is that she would be pleasantly surprised at that ballooning effect that it might have. But the best thing is that they're all the same size.
And Target, Walmart, Madame Alexander, this is from a wholesale house, their dolls are built on about the same sizing. They might be a little bit narrower or whatever, but their hands are the same so that everything fits everybody.
And do you know why that is?
Marketing!
Yeah.
Because
Selling.
Mattel bought out
Yeah.
Pleasant Company in 1995. Do you remember? To hell with Mattel.
Uh-huh.
Less than 12 years after she started the company, she sells out.
Oh,
Massive amount of money.
Yes, 500 million.
Wow.
But remember, Mattel recognized it from the get-go. This is a doll that's going someplace. So this may have been a story you haven't heard, or you haven't thought about how you can use that. But Pleasant Rowland will be extremely excited. She lives in Connecticut now. That's what her vision has become, is a way to connect. Because, right, Evie, when we're standing there, we're talking to a whole different audience. The girls are saying, "Stop, Mom, stop, Dad, stop, Granddad. I want to talk about this doll." And we do have names of girls that want to do that, to help design. I've got some more. So it's called Stand There With the Doll, and you can talk to anybody. So how about, we've done the talking, we've got a little bit of time for some questions and answers, or you to bring your doll and share your story. Would anybody
I'll
like?
give you one historical fun fact about the fact that the clothes all fit each of the different figures. Of course, at the turn of the century, we have the colonial revival and the fad for fancy dress. And you went up to the attic and got your great-grandmother's dress and dressed up in it. Well, guess what? Samantha could wear Felicity's clothes legitimately.
Yes.
That's a really good point, Nimi. That's exactly a lot of, and so by going to the people at the American Museum that both have a network as well as the interaction, that's how Pleasant brought her vision to life. She did eventually hire on staff, and I ran into them in Santa Fe as they were developing Josefina. And they went, why aren't you just come and work with us? 95% female owned company. And yet, I think you'll see her vision very, much more clearly that you may not have known. So, Ann, come on, will you bring your doll up and tell your story? Do you mind?
And little kids like to dress their doll in just about any period. And when I was doing farmers markets, I had everything from poodle skirts to period clothes. I did an Indian, Native American outfit and put beads on it, a cowgirl, and kids just dressed everything.
Yeah. And that is part of what she wants to do. Ann, tell us about Samantha.
This is Samantha Parkington in her little purse. There she goes. So my daughter was born in 1983. And so I was sitting here trying to think. I think she got Samantha in 1990.
Okay.
And
Is this her Samantha?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry, I thought it was yours.
Well, it's mine now. I bought it. So a funny thing about that was, I'm a nurse, and I was working in a hospital at the time, but I've always, well, not always, but most of the time done administration, so I had an office. And for Christmas, she got, the first Christmas that she got it, I actually had it, ordered it online, or however you did it then, I guess on the phone, and had it delivered to the hospital. And so I remember so clearly me and about 10 other women standing around. I was sitting in the floor in the middle of my office because I needed a big space, very carefully opening everything up because she'd gotten the doll and some other things. And we played with it then for a couple of days. And I very carefully put it all back together, all the packaging, so it didn't look as though I had done what I had done. And I ended up doing that for, a few more years, birthday, Christmas, different things like that. But then, of course, she grew up. And, who knows how that happens. But what I was telling Evie the other day was, I kept Samantha. She moved, I don't know what she has now, but I kept Samantha, and I have all Samantha's clothes, and I dress her for, the appropriate season and occasion, and she sits out, in my living room, and people that don't know me, that come over for the first time, are looking at me and looking at Samantha, but it's funny, nobody ever says anything. They just look. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know why people don't just say, "What are you doing with a doll?" But anyway, they don't. But my daughter had her first baby in January, and what I was telling Evie was, I was sweating bullets. Because if this baby had been a girl, I was afraid I was going to lose Samantha. Thankfully, the baby is a boy. And so I'm thinking that I get to keep Samantha. That's my Samantha story. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm so taken with her. I really don't know why. I have been to Chicago to the American Girl store. I've been to Atlanta to the American Girl store. I've been to Nashville to the American Girl store. I think they've closed the one in Denver now, but I've been there. I mean, it's crazy, and I realize it. So,
No judgment, Ann.
but I honestly, that's the thing that puzzles me. I don't know why. I don't have Barbies that I play with. I don't know why. I don't know why.
But don't move Samantha, just for a minute.
When I was doing farmers markets, I would have teenage girls come up and go, I don't play with them anymore, but I change their clothes all the time. And they got like 2 or 3 outfits that they could then change the clothes. And when my daughter was pregnant, her name is Molly, I bought the Molly doll. That was 10 years ago. And then they retired Molly, and I think they brought her back.
Yeah.
And she had a boy. And it's still in the box. They can't have any more children, so that's it. And I haven't given it to her, and she doesn't know I have it. So I don't know if I should give it to her or not, or just hang on to it, you know. But I know that when they retire the dolls, they become infinitely more valuable.
They did, what really spawned
brought
this
it back.
talk is they brought it back
Yeah.
at the 35th anniversary
Okay.
of the first 4. But I want to point out that Felicity was not the best-selling doll. And if you look at all of them together, what I realized is it's the only one where the dress comes down to her feet.
Yeah.
She looks fundamentally different if you look in the catalogs of the other dolls. And that's my theory, is that visually you go, I can't relate here, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, she just looks dowdy and old-fashioned. But that's one of the changes. Clearly, mine has been, and you can see from the base, mine's been out in the sun a bit more up here. Come bring your Felicity out. Vicki, you want to say something?
I do. Ann and I have a common bond with a country in Central America, and that is Guatemala. And Ann has made medical missions to Guatemala many times, and Roger and I have been to Guatemala 14 or 15 times. So on one of our trips to Guatemala, we took American Girl aprons as gifts for the little girls in one of the families that we sponsor. So we are spreading the word as we can. And the other idea is, and this just came to me, maybe we can dress a doll in Guatemala and Tahoe.
We can do it.
We can do it.
Yes, such a bad idea.
We can do that. We'll show you next year.
Yeah, so
A lot of these girls don't outgrow their dolls. They become sophisticated 11 and 12-year-olds. And the dolls get put on the top shelf. They're not allowed to be put away, but they're put on the top shelf. And all of my friends would report back to me, you know, I find her at midnight, dressing, rearranging. Oh, Mama, she was dusty. I'm not playing.
right? But it is, we haven't gone into the psychology of any of this. I still have the doll that I had, the last doll I received when I was 10. And then Heidi says yesterday, we didn't know this till yesterday, Heidi says, oh, I couldn't afford the dolls, but I loved them. And that your story may come to that, but I think, Heidi, we might have to bring the girls over here for that sewing day.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yes.
Okay, I think so.
That's
So
amazing.
it's
That would be
really,
amazing.
even though that's not in Pleasant's mission, it's connected us, it's connected you, it's connected you, and that was my profound feeling that we got at the farmer's market, that yes, we're adults, we don't have any kids in here, but it is, if you're at a museum, it is a way you can connect, and hopefully by knowing the story and Pleasant's vision, that you can make that come to life. She did not quilt Felicity, nor any of the other dolls could I find that they listed quilting. So tell us about your doll.
So my doll, I think I was probably in early junior high actually when I bought her, because I had been reading the books since they started to come out. And Kirsten was the first one I read and I loved her. But then Molly came out and Molly had glasses and brown hair. And I loved Molly. But then Felicity came out and that was where my heart was. And I've read all of the books probably up until probably Josefina, and after that I stopped because I think I grew up. But anyway, my best friend had Samantha, and we would switch their clothes. Like Felicity would put Samantha's birthday dress on, and here's Addie, which was interesting, just where we all went. And I love the detail that is in. I was so excited to buy her. If anyone, when you bought them early on, if you wanted the full thing, you had to buy the doll, but you also had to pay separately to get the purse, to get the little hanky, to get the coin, and to get her necklace. And by gosh, I was gonna have those. And so I waited a long time to get my doll. I saved so much money. And then after that, my mom realized how serious I was, and she purchased the rest of the things slowly for me. And so I have all of the original, when it's still labeled as Pleasant Company, and I have one Mattel dress, and you can just tell the fabric is completely different. It's not as good, but the detail, like right down to on her, I think it's her birthday dress, where she has the pinafore on. It came with little pins for me to pin her pinafore on instead of snaps. And all of those details were just, and I was so excited to have her panniers. She's got the full undergarments. She has her pockets. She has her panniers. And I would not have known about any of this if it wasn't for American Girl. And I loved the history section. Anyone who read the books, that back part where they really dug into some of the actual details was just amazing. And maybe that's why I'm here. I don't know. I think that's a large part of it.
Good point.
To understand all of that and how she would have dressed.
And that's why I thought it was really important to show Pleasant's early vision. And so our passing on to you is not that we're just adults holding on to our dolls, but that the connections that you can use to connect to, whether it's your family members or whether it is to an audience if you're at like the House Museum, to say, let's talk about what this clothing might be. These are the connecting tools, and to the fabric, the customs, the decorative arts, the whole bigger topic, and not to mention then the other businesses that it has for, say, Evie and Newbie, who, make sure you look at Newbie's patterns that she's done, that those are then honoring that tradition of sewing and of cloth and clothing, and that's the reason we're here today. So thank y'all very much. You have any questions of any of us?
I was just gonna say, she is Nikki. She was one of the dolls of the year. They came out with dolls of the year.
Yeah.
That only lasted as long as the production lasted.
Wow.
Her name is Nikki, and she was from Colorado. And she snowboarded.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, and they'll show up if we
Yeah.
do a 2-hour at the schoolhouse, the one-room schoolhouse, and they bring their dolls, and then with their index cards, they put them on a timeline so that they begin, and then they start talking to each other
Yeah.
about the dolls and what attracted them, and that's a really good point.
The one thing that I liked about American Girl dolls is when they brought out Kaya, and she was a Native American, and she was a Nez Perce Indian, which were the very peaceful Indians in Idaho that were overrun by everybody else. And it gave a really good history of what the Native Americans, who they were, that they weren't the savages, and they chose a tribe that was one of the peacemakers.
Yeah, so go look at it, good point, go look at all the early dolls, and you can see that distribution of both time, location, ethnicity. What's our common topic today? Diversity. Her target audience were 9 and 10-year-old girls. They weren't being taught history. Changed the way taught. Vicki, you want to take a picture? You want to
Yes.
speak it up?
Finish okay. I'd like to get all.
Mine were so dog-eared. Big, I wanted.
I did find 2,
Did
but
you?
only 2, and I was excited to find the newspaper, actually. I'd forgotten that I had that.
That's funny.
Most of the
So,
libraries have it in the children's section
Yeah.
too. They have the books.
Oh, very good.
okay, we're going to
All right,
go.
now,
So let me show you a
we're
catalog.
going to do some door prizes now. I have everybody.